The rock world is reeling after an unexpected twist involving two legendary names. In the wake of Ace Frehley's passing, Paul Stanley, his longtime bandmate and fellow Kiss icon, has finally broken his silence. What he revealed has left fans around the world shocked and heartbroken. After years of tension, rumors, and silence, Stanley's words pull back the curtain on a complicated friendship filled with music, madness, and memories that shaped rock history. This is the emotional truth behind Paul Stanley's stunning message about Ace Frehley, a revelation that no one saw coming. People make mistakes when they think things are timeless, and time doesn't affect them. Our being here today would not have been possible without Peter. The rock world went silent after Ace Frehley's death, but one voice mattered. Ace died last week. For days, Paul Stanley said nothing. There was no tribute, declaration, or murmur. Finally, he spoke unexpectedly. His revelations went beyond loss. It was about decades of pain, pride, and brotherhood hidden in cosmetics and song. Paul's confession shocked even die-hard Kiss fans. Paul's late brother Body. The rock world became silent after Ace Frehley's death. Fans of all eras expressed shock and sadness on social media. Guitarists worldwide played Shock Me and Rocket Ride in honor to a lightning-fast electric guitarist. Despite the sadness, one question stood out. Paul Stanley. Where? Paul was Ace's Kiss musical and metaphorical partner for decades. Star Child and Spaceman, two sides of the same tale. Though tributes came in, Paul said nothing. No tweet, comment, or small nod. After days and a week of silence, fans wondered if he was mourning. Was he nursing ancient wounds? Or did he grieve privately? After some time, he spoke with one of their mates. The words of his former Kiss bandmates hit most. Paul Stanley and Gene Simmons issued an emotional, genuine remark in a rare joint statement. Ace was an indispensable rock soldier throughout K1SS's formative years. We were shaped by his style, tone, and spirit. Brother, bandmate, and buddy. He brought laughter, music, and fire, which we remember today. Peter Criss, the original drummer who performed with Paul and Ace from the start, offered his own words. Millions were moved by Ace. Nobody's guitar sang like his. He was unique. Our tributes felt like the concluding chord in a 50-year song for fans who had watched their breakups, reunions, and reconciliations. Remember Paul and Ace's minor collisions? Paul and Ace had one of rock's most complicated relationships, combining admiration, friction, and unspoken brotherhood. They were never enemies, but rarely agreed. From the start of K&SS, their egos clashed creatively and explosively. The perfectionist Paul sought precision, expertise, and control. He said to practice until every note was perfect. However, Ace was instinctual, raw, and unpredictable. He loved chaos, disliked authority, and played by feel. The difference drove K1SS's early brilliance but also caused friction. As the band became a global success in the late 1970s, Paul and Gene Simmons took over production, composition, and commercial strategy. Ace felt hemmed in. He intended K1SS to be strong, heavy, and unfiltered, but the band was commercial and spectacle-oriented. He later stated that observing his band's decisions made him feel like a visitor. The worst part was that his bright, innovative ideas were often ignored. Paul said Ace was talented but unreliable, whereas Ace said the others were control freaks who smothered his ideas. Ace's alcoholism and drug use widened the split by the late 1970s. His unpredictable temperament hindered touring and recording. Paul, a disciplined man, became annoyed as Ace missed rehearsals or arrived late. Paul said in an interview that Ace was a genius on stage but a ghost off. Pressure and tension isolated Ace more. He later admitted to using drugs to cope with being misunderstood. Their camaraderie faded, replaced by music-based professionalism. Ace's 1982 Kiss breakup was less explosive than expected. The band continued, but the chemistry changed. In later interviews, Paul criticized Ace's erratic work ethic, and Ace accused Paul and Gene of being control-obsessed. Despite smiles, animosity simmered during the 1996 reunion tour with the original lineup. Old scars never really healed. Paul's message resolved decades of strife. The music that created them brothers kept them together after the cacophony died down, despite their differences. We remember Ace Frehley's final days and how, after a fall in his home studio, his health swiftly degenerated until he died. One last tumble for Ace Frehley. Ace Frehley appeared healthy in fall 2025. The volatile musician had settled down after years of touring, recovery, and meditation. He played, recorded, and met fans with that sly grin and effortless flair that never faded. Ace's health was deteriorating behind the scenes. The effects of decades of physical strain, late nights, and old habits were evident. However, no one anticipated how rapidly everything would shift. Ace was working at his upstate New York home studio when disaster struck on September 25, 2025. Reports say he fell severely, but it didn't look disastrous. Friends and coworkers reported he was in excellent spirits earlier that day, discussing new projects and a final solo tour. He was sent to the hospital within hours for dizziness and loss of consciousness. Initial tests revealed a traumatic brain injury from the fall, which was unexpected. He was monitored by doctors and moved to Morristown Medical Center in New Jersey for acute care. Days later, his management canceled his tour due to medical difficulties, informing fans of the accident. Many felt it was a brief setback that Ace would overcome, as he had done with so many prior crises. Days passed with few updates. Media reported the news on October 16, 2025, shocking the music industry. Ace Frehley received life support and a ventilator. The fall caused significant brain hemorrhaging that his body could no longer resist. His family was informed his recovery was unlikely by doctors. The musician who once rocked crowds with his lightning-shaped guitar lay in a hospital bed surrounded by machines and prayers. Family sources stated they grappled with the decision. Over 2 weeks, they watched for any sign of improvement or consciousness. Damage was irreparable. Ace's family visited him one last time in the hospital that morning. His daughter Monique grasped his hand. His wife Rachel sat peacefully beside him. Brother and sister stood nearby. They took the hardest decision, removing life support, together. Ace Frehley, 74, died peacefully few hours later. In Morristown, New Jersey, death occurred in the early afternoon. A brief, heartfelt statement from his family revealed the news. Ace died surrounded by his loved ones. He was a father, husband, brother, and dreamer. His music and soul will live on in those who played guitar because of him. The announcement went viral. International tributes began within minutes. Fans put candles and guitar picks outside the Las Vegas Kiss Museum. Metallica, Foo Fighters, and Guns N' Roses guitarists called him an original. The loss hit home for those who watched him bend notes into galaxies. Following days, rock stations worldwide played Ace's music for hours. New York Groove, Shock Me, Cold Gin, and Rocket Ride ruled playlists again like in the 1970s. His work was new to younger listeners, while elderly fans cried. Ace's riffs were always big, but now they were heavier. They rang final. The news called his death the end of an era, but those who knew him knew it was more. A lifetime of balance ended. Despite living fast and falling hard, he kept coming back. Ace joked about how many times he should have died in interviews years before. "I've cheated death more than I can count," he laughed in a Rolling Stone interview. "Perhaps it's time. I'll play until then." Finally, Ace Frehley was that. He lived and breathed rock and roll to the end. He was flawed. He was impulsive, stubborn, and honest. For Paul Stanley, seeing the world mourn his old friend must have felt like history repeating itself, like the last notes quiet. Morristown admirers gathered outside Ace's hospital after his death. They brought flowers, guitars, and cardboard silver lightning bolts. Shock Me's introductory riff was softly repeated on a small speaker. Some stood quietly contemplating. No fireworks, no spotlight. Just thanks for the man who made music sound like space. Ace Frehley's journey concluded with family, sound, and a dreamer who refused to be conventional. He once claimed he never wanted to grow up and stop feeling that charge as the lights went down and the first chord hit. He never did in his loved one's eyes. You must look beyond makeup, riffs, and pandemonium to understand why people liked Ace Frehley. Shadow of Ace Frehley, genius, rebel, enigma. Ace was more than Kiss's spaceman. He radiated danger and revolt. His guitar spoke, slurred, yelled, and defied gravity with each solo. Ace's flaws made him real in an image-driven period. He was unmistakably genuine from the time he entered that 1973 audition wearing mismatched sneakers. His goal was to play, not wow. That raw energy became Kiss's DNA, the crackle under the polish, the lightning that kept their music alive. Ace energized the enterprise founded by Paul Stanley and Gene Simmons. Popular songs like Shock Me, Cold Gin, and Parasite formed hard rock's foundation. Few expected Ace Frehley's 1978 solo album to be the greatest of Kiss's four. The single New York Groove nailed his essence. Swagger, comedy, and constant action. Maybe for the first time, the world saw Ace's free world abilities. Ace always saw freedom as a double-edged sword. Success brought temptation, and temptation caused his career-long downward spiral. Despite addiction, failed tours, and near misses, fans stuck with him. They recognized themselves in him, the dreamer who couldn't settle but kept reaching for the heavens. Ace symbolized rock's most bitter truth. Creation may be consumed by fire. Even in his worst years, he had a magnetic spark that proclaimed, "I'm still here." The man behind the smile and jokes wanted to be seen, not simply seen. He masked his fragility with laughing, guitars, and noise, yet every solo revealed his desire to matter and last. His unpredictability protected and cursed him. He was unbeatable on the pitch. After dark, he was flawed, yearning, and gorgeous. Posthumously, Paul called him an irreplaceable rock soldier to reconcile. After dying, Ace Frehley became more than a renegade. He was the brother who made their dream possible, and Kiss's thunder's permanent echo. He was the chaos that gave their order meaning, the wild star that burnt too fast but lighted the sky long enough for everyone to look up. Yes, before the arenas, fireworks, and cosmetics myth, two young men with guitars tried to make it. Paul and Ace rise. New York was not the dream metropolis it claimed to be in the early 70s. Every artist chased the impossible, a sound that would get them out, in tough clubs and long hours. Stanley Eisen, a.k.a. Paul Stanley, felt like an outsider in Queens. Growing up with a damaged ear and partial deafness, he understood how nasty people could be. But the anguish sharpened him. It fueled his thirst and suggested music could be his escape. He wanted to be seen and heard. He envisioned a self-image the world couldn't laugh at every time he glanced in the mirror. Actor, showman, star child, Paul Stanley became that. Ace Frehley, however, was charming pandemonium. He was gifted and raw, a Bronx kid with a naughty smile. Ace had no interest in fame or business, only playing. He'd put in his guitar, crank the amp till it screamed, and smile like a kid who'd gotten away with something. He had effortless comedy, unpredictability, and swagger. Ace lived instinctively, while Paul worked discipline. Legend says Ace wore one orange and one red sneaker to his 1973 Paul and Gene Simmons audition. After plugging in, he played a solo without saying much. The lads looked at each other, knowing. Ace's guitar was raw, compelling and nearly scary. Kiss began to form as a band and a chemistry experiment that would reinvent rock. Early years were tough. They couldn't afford rent and carried their gear across icy streets to play half-empty venues. Their conviction made up for their discomfort. Paul envisioned stage conceptions, harmonies, and costumes. Ace added life to their sound with his spontaneity. Together, they balanced. Ace burned the framework Paul built. Their relationship started with music and mischief. They were ambitious brothers looking to make it. After a show, Paul and Ace would get a drink and joke about the ruckus, according to Paul. We shared the excitement of being young and loud in a world that didn't expect them to live without ego, money, or ownership. Kiss changed their dynamic. Perfectionist Paul always was. He considered every note, wardrobe detail, and phrase. In contrast, Ace thrived on imperfection. He made the bad note sound right. Fans liked his unpredictability and instant danger that made Kiss gigs electrifying. Paul liked it, though he wouldn't admit it. He knew Ace gave soul to the stage no one else could. Kiss burst in 1975. Alive transformed them from striving dreamers into global icons. Kids applied makeup, imitated swagger, and fantasized about smoke and fire guitars. Fame caused fractures. Paul, always careful, sensed Ace's slip. Late nights and harder partying increased. Ace saw the band as a lifestyle, whereas Paul saw it as a craft. As cracks under fresh paint, the tension that would break them apart began silently. On stage, they were unstoppable. Detroit Rock City film from those years shows it. Inaudible conversation between Paul and Ace. Paul entertains the crowd with his showmanship while Ace shines. Chaos becomes art with screaming guitars. They were yin and yang, order and chaos, fire and order. Paul's accuracy might have been frigid without Ace. Maybe Ace's brilliance would have burned too fast without Paul. Together, they created magic. Off stage, there wasn't always laughing. Paul was businesslike. Ace wasn't. Resentment grew over royalties, songwriting credits, and creative direction. Ace felt stifled and his thoughts ignored. Paul was upset that Ace didn't take the band seriously. In an interview, Paul compared it like steering a car, while the other guy kept tugging the wheel toward the precipice. Ace's presence was electric. The strain hid moments of fraternity from fans, late evenings after gigs, sitting backstage in silence, sharing the relief of surviving another night. Times when Paul covered for Ace during his harder days, or when Ace cracked a joke to calm a meeting. They fought, yet they understood each other like no one else. Both had to prove themselves. Both have fought for visibility their entire lives. The cosmetics became a mask and mirror during those years. Two characters designed to survive fame, the Star Child and the Spaceman. Paul's single black star face paint became his method of reclaiming the part of himself the world mocked. Silver lightning reflected Ace's dreamer nature and was pure escape. When they performed, they turned anguish into art. Their friendship was deepened by their shared knowledge and escape. In the 1970s, their differences deepened, but so did their respect. Ace was naturally gifted, Paul recognized. His melodic riffs were strong, structured but crazy solos. Ace knew Paul was the backbone, ensuring the music was recorded, performances were arranged, and the machine ran. Even when they fought, they shared an admiration they couldn't express. Now it's simple to recall clashes, falling outs, and harsh interviews. In the beginning, before their identities were known, what they built was sacrosanct. Two kids from different boroughs and cultures bond over sound and dreams. They improved each other even while they hurt each other. Paul reflected that we were all striving to find ourselves under that makeup. Ironically, we may have been most ourselves then. Their partnership was strangely beautiful. It was volatile and important. Ace gave Kiss life with his wildness. Paul kept that heart beating. They built something neither could have done alone. When the glitter and spectacle are removed, their narrative was never about celebrity. Two guys sought identity, acceptance, and belonging in a difficult world. They found all of that in each other's music for a few golden years before the pandemonium. True, even strong relationships can break. Kiss was torn apart by tensions behind the roaring stages and blinding lights. A rift. The music ended. Kiss became more than a band in the late 70s, an empire. Everything about them screamed spectacle, makeup, fire, explosions. Behind the sparkle and thunder came a darker plot. Everything was enhanced by fame, applause, fatigue, and fraying among the group. Paul Stanley saw every show as a mission. He was meticulous, the chord tightener, exact harmonies, audience pleased. For Ace Frehley, independence was key. The stage let him lose himself. Outside the rules, both energy were always balanced. Paul's order, Ace's anarchy. This balance began to unravel by 1978. The band produced albums, concerts, and media appearances at an insane rate. Fame, which they'd worked hard for, felt like a cage of expectation. Each member was absorbing themselves. Ace's world became a haze of late nights and excess. The drugs that relaxed him before a show took over. Friends said he occasionally arrived hours late or never. Others remembered his biting humor. His laughter lowered. This infuriated Paul, who had built his career on control. He spoke with guarded disappointment in interviews. "I loved Ace," he said. "When one engine won't fire, you can't assemble a rocket ship." Backstage, Paul and Gene Simmons demanded tighter concerts, cleaner performances, and more lavish displays, while Ace insisted Kiss had lost its soul. In his book, No Regrets, Ace said he didn't want to be a puppet. "Loud, dirty, authentic rock and roll was my goal. Everything seemed to be about money, control, and image. Not enjoyable anymore." They didn't argue strongly, colder, quieter, and riskier. There was simmering resentment. The band rarely performed together during 1979 Dynasty recordings. Ace's guitar parts were often recorded individually. Paul and Gene rewrote tunes without him. Ace's material was sometimes ignored or diluted. Later, he pondered that they no longer trusted me, like I was there for makeup. Paul spotted a man deliberately drifting away. "We killed ourselves to save the ship." After years, Paul believed Ace was one of the most talented persons he'd known. Having talent doesn't mean anything without using it. The years before Ace's departure were quieter than loud. Band meetings become monologues. Session concluded early. Tour buses were frigid, moving tombs. These men who dreamed together in modest New York bars could scarcely look at each other. Paul was asked about Ace's absence from numerous gigs in a 1982 interview. It was a painful response. "Sometimes words don't work anymore. Keep playing and hope the music speaks for you." However, music no longer bridged the gap. Ace and Kiss split in 1982 without a bang. With fatigue. He told reporters he wanted a break, but friends knew it wasn't. I said farewell. Despite animosity, grief existed. After Ace went, Paul admitted no one could fill the void. Paul stated he was unpredictable but outstanding when good. He played something I could never match. Kiss continued in later years. New cast, touring, masks. But something vital was missing. They had lost their chemistry, that peculiar magic from their contrasting egos. They reunited decades later, but the scars remained. One wonders what might have happened if Paul, Gene, Ace, and Peter had discovered peace earlier. If celebrity hadn't accentuated shortcomings. If pressure hadn't buried their bond in expectation. In 2014, Paul said the tragedy isn't that we battled. We stopped conversing, which is tragic. We forgot we were four guys trying to move people. The concept that their stillness became louder than their music is frightening. The echoes of what was lost when the music stopped remained more than the explosions on stage.